3 games in a row and just beat down Aaron Rodgers and the Packers in Week 6, 27-10. Overlooking just how insanely bad Green Bay played, the Jets looked pretty good. The first half was an absolute snooze fest. It was tied at 3, but things started to get going in the third quarter, and eventually New York ran away with it with a huge help from a blocked punt touchdown. The Jets looked good, especially the defense, but Zach Wilson still didn't necessarily play that well. He went 10 of 18 for 110 yards, and he didn't score. It was more of a Breece Hall game for sure. I mean, he rushed for $116 and found the end zone. Breece put up a similar stat line in Week 5, 100 yards and a touchdown. Oh yeah, and Breece had 100 receiving yards on 2 catches too, just 2 catches. He had a big day. Wilson threw for 210 yards, and the Jets went on to dominate the Dolphins 40-17. It was a weird game because Tua Tagovailoa was out after that concussion, and Teddy Bridgewater ended up suffering a concussion of his own early in the game, so things were easier for the Jets, but it was still impressive nonetheless. Zach Wilson played his first game of the year in Week 4 on the road against Pittsburgh. That actually ended up being the same game that Kenny Pickett took over for the Steelers, and well, he threw 3 picks in relief and lost 24-20. But it was exciting. Wilson threw for 250 yards and a touchdown to 2 interceptions. Nothing crazy, but it was his first time starting in a regular season game since his rookie season. Zach Wilson got injured in the preseason. It looked pretty bad at first. It kind of looked like an ACL tear or something, but it ended up being a meniscus tear and a bone bruise in his right knee. Not nearly as bad as it could have been, but Wilson did still have to miss time. He ended up having a very bumpy rookie year. The Jets selected him second overall, and Wilson ended up starting in Week 1. He did miss 4 games later in the season because of a PCL sprain. In 13 games, Wilson went 3-13. He threw for 2,334 yards and 9 touchdowns to 11 interceptions. Wilson did add 4 rushing touchdowns, but he only completed 55.6% of his passes. He fumbled 5 times, and he got sacked 44 times for 370 yards, the most in the league. There were struggles, but there was the hope that he was in line for a big jump in year 2, and the injury did kind of halt that. Joe Flacco started the first 3 games of the season for New York. The Jets struggled in Week 1, and that's fair. I don't think anybody really expected the Jets to be able to beat the Ravens, and they didn't. Not even close. Baltimore won 24-9. Flacco passed for over 300 yards with a touchdown and an interception in his return. The Jets really should have lost in Week 2. It's still a miracle that they didn't. It was, if not, one of the best endings to a game this season. With 1:55 left in the game, the Jets trailed by 13 after Nick Chubb scored on a play where he should have just fallen down because New York didn't have any more timeouts. If he falls down, it's over. Instead, the Jets got the ball back and everything fell apart for Cleveland. Cade York missed the extra point. Corey Davis scored a 66-yard touchdown, and then the Jets got the onside kick, and Garrett Wilson found the end zone to go up 1 and ultimately win the game 31-30. Flacco went off for over 300 yards and 4 touchdowns. Flacco then turned around and played pretty bad against the Bengals in Week 3 in a 27-12 loss. Flacco threw for 285 and had 2 picks, but his time was up as the Jets starter anyways. Everyone knew that this was Zach Wilson's team, and once he was ready, he was going to start. There has to be a lot of credit given to the Jets for the way they've built around Zach Wilson. New York has proven to usually be a bad franchise, but there has been a clear effort to put Wilson in position to succeed. The big move was using a first rounder on Garrett Wilson at the draft. He's likely been the best rookie wideout so far this year. He just had his worst game of the year against Green Bay, but Garrett has been pretty good. 290 yards and 2 touchdowns so far this season. Elijah Moore, in his second year in the pros, has over 200 yards, but he hasn't scored. Veteran Corey Davis has about 300 yards and 2 touchdowns. Watching the Jets, though, it feels like the real difference maker on the offense, at least in recent weeks, has been Breece Hall. He was their second round pick, and he's really just been a lot of fun to watch. He has 275 yards and 2 touchdowns rushing. Then through the air, Breece has 213 yards and a touchdown. Despite the performances, the Jets' offensive line has actually been one of the worst in the league, both pass blocking and especially run blocking. The real reason why the Jets have won 3 straight and are 4-2 is probably because of the defense. When Robert Saleh was hired to be the head coach, there was the expectation that he would be able to have a successful defense, and that's 100% been the case. One of the big reasons has been the names the Jets have brought in. The Jets had the 4th overall pick of the draft, and they took Sauce Gardner. Now, there was a lot of hype around Gardner. I mean, he was amazing at Cincinnati, and, well, let me make this very clear. He lives up to the hype. Sauce is an absolute stud. I already mentioned Garrett Wilson was a first. The Jets had 3 first-round picks, though. The other was edge rusher Jermaine Johnson. Quinnen Williams has been really good, too. If Sauce hasn't been the best player on that defense, then it's Williams. He was the 3rd overall pick in 2019, and he's looked the part this year. For what seems to be like
the first time in forever,
the Jets are a fun team to watch and pay attention to. There's so many good storylines and things to watch, and at the top of that list is Zach Wilson. It sucked not being able to watch him play for the first few weeks, but since he returned, the Jets are literally 3-0. But is it because of him? Well, I do think that Wilson is a better option than Joe Flacco, at least at this point in his career, but Wilson hasn't necessarily been good. Wilson has thrown for 572 yards, less than 200 a game, and only a single touchdown to 2 interceptions. I do think a lot of his success has come from the pieces around him and the Jets actually having success, which is still a good thing. Both of his picks came in that first game when he got back, so it is kind of hard to fault him for that. It'd been a while. He's looked better since, but still nothing too crazy. That being said, the Jets do have the right pieces on offense now. At least it seems that way. Garrett Wilson is a ton of fun to watch. I mean, this guy could literally turn into one of the better wideouts in the league. Elijah Moore has been kind of disappointing in my opinion. He's been fine, but I do think a big breakout was expected. Breece Hall has been great though. He's getting more and more carries and kind of just pushing Michael Carter out of the window, and he does deserve it. I wouldn't be a fan of using such a high pick on a running back, but Breece Hall can really change the way an offense runs. The Jets have done a really incredible job drafting recently, especially last year. The Jets, it just feels like they've rebuilt the right way, and it's still going to take some time, but New York is on the right path. The Jets are 4-2, but I still don't think this is their year. I think New York is probably still a few seasons away. The AFC East is a weird division now. The Bills are by far the best, and I think everyone expects them to take the crown. The Dolphins are confusing because they started 3-0 and looked amazing, but now they've lost 3 straight, and they just can't have a quarterback stay healthy at all, apparently. I guess the Patriots are kind of the worst team in the division, but even they aren't bad. The AFC East is pretty solid, or respectable as a division, and it would be hard to imagine the Jets overtaking the Bills for the crown, but a wildcard spot is always in play, and who knows, maybe it's the Jets' year to return back to the postseason.